Hello, fellow Star Trek fans. Welcome back to a very special extra episode of the Clonestar podcast. This week, I am joined by my wonderful co-host, the wonderful Mike number two, Captain Goodwill. Captain Goodwill, how are you doing this week?
It is an honor to be back on Clonestar, Mike number one. I hope that you are well.
I am good, thank you, and thank you for joining us. Now, in this special extra episode, we are delighted to interview the incredible Mary Chieffo, who has reprised a Klingon role in this week's episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. Because time was short, we've recorded this bit just a little bit early. So let's jump into the interview. So, how did it feel to return to the Star Trek universe, this time in an animated format?
It was such a delight is the first word that comes to my mind, but I really, I'm a fan of Lower Decks. And just to get to do something so fun and funny, and to still be a Klingon, but to be, a Klingon different from L'Rell. And again, they're kind of, the TNG era. That's such a strong kind of lady Klingon, both literally, I guess, as characters, but also archetypally. So yeah, just a delight. And a thrill.
How was your approach different for voice acting as opposed to live action?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's just like a different muscle, like the same kind of core energy, but obviously with the voiceover, I'm in a booth. I worked with Brad, the producer, and like we just, would go line by line, playing around with things, and also, yeah, as like Clara is kind of throwing things and making a lot of grunts. So I also we had a lot of those kind of, okay, make that sound and that sort of stuff. Which was a delight. Yeah. There were a few where I'm like, oh gosh, I just like, this is someone we're recording this. So that's, a fun part of the process. And I've noted too, you don't have to be so fully memorized, which some people that can feel like it blocks them, but to me I was a little bit more free because I was like, yeah, you can glance down if you need to, and just it allowed a certain sense of play. Whereas again, yeah, with live action, especially as a Klingon in live action, I have around 3 hours of makeup, getting into the makeup, getting into the armor or or chancellor outfit.
Hang on. So you're telling me you didn't go in full cosplay, makeup, teeth, the whole nine yards?
I pitched it, but they said, it's just a little bit too much time.
She was there for the thrash loot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that, yeah, obviously I'd say the starkest contrast. Is less sweaty, just generally less sweaty when you're recording in a booth. Although I still, I've got a good endocrine system. I still get pretty sweaty no matter what. But yeah, that's kind of the hours, because I got to have a nice concentrated hour in the booth. Whereas obviously the days are much longer for filming in the live action. And I say too, I have all the ice packs on my wrists and fans and the just different ways you're kind of taking care of yourself throughout the day is a little bit different.
I suppose it's easier to have lunch as well when you're not in
this is
prosthetics.
Very true. Yeah, I less smoothies and little protein balls for my voiceover work.
So what were the challenges of capturing the intensity of a Klingon character through voice alone?
Yeah, I think, what's great is the way that you are in the booth. I was standing up. I empowered myself to just stay physical, to stay embodied, because I think you can feel like, oh no, I'm just going to do the voice and be here. But they are, like she is a very physical character on screen. So I just allowed myself to have that liberty in the booth as well, especially with some of the grunts and stuff. But I think that, that was the biggest thing that I really empowered myself to not hold back on, to go like, yeah, let it be as physical as it would be if you were a live action character, because that's going to inform the sound, literally.
So playing a powerful Klingon woman influenced your view on Star Trek's portrayal of the species?
Yes. I mean, it's funny. Yes, indeed. I mean, I do feel so grateful that both in being when I was originally cast and looking all at all the different Lady Klingons of the past, even though technically ahead of the timeline, we know what I'm saying. Um, but seeing the ways in which, and I often reference Grilka in Deep Space Nine because it's just like a very, very clear episode where you see this woman who's not able to to succeed her husband's house, because she's a woman, and that really stuck out to me. And I remember, seeing that episode a little bit before we were really starting to film Discovery and referencing that on some panels and really seeing that a version of that arc happen on the show for L'Rell, a kind of even more intense version of that in a lot of ways. And I did really realize how much of a patriarchy the Klingon Empire still was, that they still had a lot of growth to be had there. And then reflecting on that, of course, just as human Mary, as a woman in this world, and, unfortunately, we just see it every which way these days, of the ways in which women are held to a different standard often than men seeking leadership roles. And even when they get them, as L'Rell does, she does get this power, and yet is still up against so much and has to make these giant sacrifices, at the end of Point of Light, to be taken seriously. So I've definitely felt I've been very educated in the Klingon world and its issues, which again is the mirror to our own, which is the gift of Trek, is it allows us to reflect on where we want to keep growing as a society.
Yep. Especially after today.
Yes.
I have that one at that.
Yeah. We will just nod.
Over that one.
Yep. We will
so what nuances did you bring to is it Kerala?
But now Kalara.
Kalara.
Yeah.
Okay. So what nuances did you bring to Kalara to differentiate her from L'Rell?
Yes. So what was really fun was with L'Rell, I did a lot of great in-depth work with our dialect coach, Rhea Nolan, in developing a dialect, which we, had talked about a bit. And that was so cool and great and felt so right for, like, we hear her mostly speaking in this Klingon dialect. Of course, she would be more, in proximity to that sound. Whereas, with Kalara, I really lent, more one of myself, and then looking at the Duras sisters, Kalar, and Grilka. So giving that kind of flavor of them, but then empowering myself to just, let her be, I've said, the Klingon flavor of me, which is fun. And then, I did get to watch the episode and hearing it back. It's like, it is fun because it does feel like a little closer to me, in a Klingon way. And I'm so glad that that's kind of recorded and in canon now that she exists. And it was neat to just do a new exciting voice for another Lady Klingon.
So with Kalara, did you collaborate with the writers to add a specific cultural references at all?
Yeah, I mean, they when I was in the booth working, they encouraged me to kind of just lean in as I was just kind of describing into, like, my version of this kind of classic Lady Klingon archetype. And then they wrote it so well, it just kind of writes itself or embodies itself, I would say. They wrote it, but they wrote it themselves. But to me, it was like I got the humor that they were going for and the different, we've seen the mating ritual, so to me, it was just like perfectly inevitable how we were going to play with it. And even within that, it wasn't like, okay, there's one line reading of this and that's the only way it works. We still got to play with certain lines and be like, oh, let's do it that one a little sexier and, like, this one a little more gruff, and vice versa. So I think that was probably the most fun, was because that is a very Klingon thing. It's like, is this a sexy line or is this a brutal line? And yes, it's both. So that's probably the most kind of things we got to massage there.
Were there any surprising character details that you connected with?
Hmm. That's a great question. I think, just in like, and having watched it, like the way she carries herself, and more, it's like more aspirational. Like, I'd like to be that cool. Like, in really, like,
You are that cool, don't
well,
worry.
thank you. I think, but there is something like, as someone who really does, as we've noted, I love to transform and love to let my true vulnerability shine through a very extreme character. But with her being a little closer to me, to go like, yeah, she is closer to you, and you can be that cool. So yeah, just kind of like having that energy of, yeah, and then when she's like, you're fraternizing with humans, like just say your piece and leave. Get what you want, girl. Like,
Did you find that Kalara's story aligns with or challenges classic Klingon values?
hmm. Well, I like classic Klingon values because I think that I mean, she likes the captain. And that feels like, that's certainly a value. I think what we see in the episode overall is there is a mixture, and I do love, yeah, seeing them on the farm and everything, like, and obviously with Mach overall, like that you get this, nuanced, fun and goofy portrayal of this Klingon
Yeah.
character. And I think that she embodies a classic energy that isn't necessarily every Klingon. Like, I think it's great that we get multiple sides of the Klingon experience, because we're not a monolith. And, we got to see that on Discovery too. And I love referencing to Navik because I think that's such a beautiful contrast to a lot of ideas of what Klingons can look like and act like. So yes, I would say that she embodies a certain classic ideal, but it isn't necessarily the only Klingon way to be.
So, off the back of that, what one key quality of Kalara do you think will resonate with fans?
Mm. Um, I think um, her like sharpness is the word. I love her. She's just forward. Like, she's just like going for it. She's not apologetic. And I think that is part of what we love about Lady Klingons overall, is like they actually, within, as I've acknowledged, this much more patriarchal still system than, say, the Federation, they still, like, innately, Lady Klingons are more intense than a lady human. Like, and I found that with Laurel as well, is like all of these standards that we have for how a woman should act or behave are really defined by these human ideals, whatever that means. Whereas, yeah, like Clara, just like, she's like having a great time flirting with this guy while also putting him in a neck hold. Is that, yeah, neck hold?
Headlock.
Headlock, there we go.
Headlock.
Headlock, thank you. And throwing, knives, and like, and she got invited by the thrash flute player. Like, like she's just like living her life in a way that some human women might be like, ooh, that's a bit much. But I think I feel like they've beautifully allowed her to be a part of the Lady Klingon canon of women who do what they want and say what they want, despite their more patriarchal society.
So this is our last question. How was this experience on Lower Decks? Sorry, let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
How has this experience on Lower Decks changed your perspective of the Star Trek franchise?
Um, I would say, yeah, it changed. It has, like, just continued to expand and excite my experience. I think it was very cool, of all the shows to like get the opportunity to jump into after being Laurel, to be on one that's that's animated, a very different like literal era and energy and writing. It was such a thrill to see how expansive our world can be. And again, because I was a fan, I wasn't like shocked by the kind of material I got to do. But I've always appreciated that with all of the new shows that they are different flavors of Trek, not all the same thing. And again, and Brad and Mike in particular have just been so lovely. Like, we've kind of been like high-fiving throughout the experience of like, yeah, Trek, we love it. And so to get to collaborate with them more specifically was just really awesome because they're good humans.
They are. We had the privilege of talking to Mike a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, wonderful.
So, yes, great humans. I think that's it for time. So, Mary, thank you so much for allowing us to pester you for 15 minutes. Hopefully we get to see you in more Star Trek. I'm looking at Strange New Worlds because, it's happening at the time that season 2 of Discovery ended. So L'Rell is out there.
She's out there. She's got to be doing something.
Exactly.
We need more Mary in Star Trek.
Yes, we need more Mary in Star Trek. We'll set up a petition for that later.
I love it.
Mary, thank you so much.